I've been a fan of Horween's Latigo leather for many years. I just love the natural, rugged appearance of this leather, and the way it develops patina is really special. So I wanted to learn a little bit more. So I went over to the source, met with Skip Horween at Horween Leather Company, and he taught us a bit about this special piece of leather. All right, Skip. Well, for the last 15 years, I've been a big fan of Latigo, and I finally have my own Latigo Fat Herbie. But I think a lot of people are confused or are not informed about Latigo. So I came right to the source and tell me a little bit more about that particular leather.
Okay, well, historically, going back to its origins, Latigo was actually an alum tanned leather, and it was used initially in saddle strings and used in the saddlery trade. And it came to be adapted later on to a chrome tanned base because it was an irreversible tannage, whereas alum can be washed back out. And it tended to be more durable and hold up better in different applications. There's a version of that is used, it's a close cousin for things like baseballs and cricket balls, which look very much like it. So Latigo took on many different forms, and there were, going back 40, 50 years, there were quite a few different tanners that made Latigo, and what it settled into was a chrome tanned, heavily vegetable retanned leather. And then, while I think that there at times has been some confusion about how close it makes Latigo to Chrome Excel, there are a couple of major differences. Number one, Chrome Excel uses a much darker, naturally colored retannage, which lends it to primarily earth tones. So you don't see a lot of lighter colored Chrome Excels. Our answer to that was to go to a lighter extract du Cavalier. And the other main difference is that Chrome Excel is hot stuffed, which is our blend of raw oils, waxes and greases, and Latigo is a fat liquor or a blend of emulsified oils. And you can adjust the amount and type of those oils, and that's why each different tanner had a very different sort of a Latigo. In the early days, one of the best known Latigos was done by Poch and Peterson out in California, and that is probably closest to our Illini Latigo, which actually was a stuffed Latigo and was stuffed primarily with waxes, as is our Illini, which gives you a much denser and firmer type Latigo. And we got into the Latigo business back in the day when Poch and Peterson really couldn't make enough. And as a matter of fact, what it was then, the style was like we have a little bit of it here, was everybody was using this yellow Latigo and primarily glazed, some of it was unglazed. And people at that time then were hand staining it once the product was made. And we have an old Legion product here, which shows the stained look, and you can see that they took all the selections and actually preferred the ones that had imperfections in it because they really wanted to see the depth of the leather and the leather as it really was. It was really interesting because what we dropped later on was our yellow Latigo was for years called yellow number 29 because that's how many tries it took us to get it right. And so, as I've always told you and everybody else, if nothing else, we're stubborn. Yeah. So we just stuck with it until we finally got it. Our biggest customers when I first started here, in the early 70s when I was in high school, and then full-time in the later 70s, was there were lots of cowboy boot guys who were using this, and before they stained it, they actually used to take and crumple it so that when they stained it, all of the staining went in, and so each was a little bit unique and different. A couple of other colors we did a lot of. At that point as well, our biggest leather when I started here in 1978 was Latigo by a lot. And the biggest customer for it at that time was G.H. Bass, and they were making sandals out of it. And we did basically 4 colors for them. We did our raisin cherry color, which is exactly what it sounds like. I mean, it's just sort of a reddish. I had a piece here somewhere. This is the color. This was far and away the biggest color. We did the mock color, which is this one. We did a burgundy color, which we very creatively called 6565. and then we did a little bit of navy. And those four, I mean, they were making, that factory was making between 90 and 95,000 pairs of sandals a week. It was just huge, huge business. And you know, and it was a half a foot a pair. So,
That's a lot of leather.
and then also at that time we did quite a large business in aniline latigos in the same sorts of colors with the clog makers. Clogs were a big fashion, and we used a higher oil content in our retannage, and we staked it, we mechanically softened it and oiled it off. So it had a subtle pull up, but it formed very well, and it took the kind of force lasting and heat that's required to form a clog and then set the shape of the toe. And we did a lot of that for a long time. This aniline latigo, which is oiled off, is absolutely beautiful and wears great. And as you have discovered with your wallet, acquires a really amazing, rich patina over time, just with regular use. I mean, you don't really have to do anything. It's a kind of a low maintenance, you know, high durability leather. I think the other thing that you and I had talked about is, you know, there's some confusion naturally between aniline latigo as we defined it and glazed latigos, and what you'll see from us is what we call GBS, and the GBS stands for glazed both sides, because it used to get a plate on the flesh side and then glazed on the glazing jacks, very much like the cordovan shells on the grain side. And I took the opportunity, we were going to talk, and I reglazed this piece so that you can actually see what the glazing does. Now that doesn't stay in there forever. It stays there for long enough so that as you wear it, it will begin to polish a little more quickly. And for the people that were staining it, lots of them liked it glazed because it controlled the amount of stain that the leather would take as they were hand staining it. Otherwise, the leather acted very much like end grain wood, in which it sort of would drop in a much less controllable fashion, which if you were doing, you know, real effect was awesome, but if you were trying to do antique, it was harder to control. The aniline latigo has some similarities in its finishing system to the Chrome Excel, in that it gets a base coat and a top coat, which is meant to maintain the sheen, and you can control the amount. You know, people use glacé latigo, wanted it shinier. You can see we brought a piece in here. We did something with Ralph Lauren a while ago, and they used a baby Scotch grain in it, and they just wanted generally to be brighter. So it is also quite a versatile leather. I happen to really like the polo tan. I think it's really rich looking, and we'll get a great patina over time. But it is something that sort of has cycled in and out of style over the years, and there seems to be some interest in it now. I mean, I know that gosh, when I started, so 40 plus years ago, we had a pair of shoes made out of the glazed latigo, and my father sent them out to Alden because the grain is very tight and fine, and had them just finish them the way they would a calfskin in their packing room. And the stuff finishes up. It's just is absolutely gorgeous. So it was a little rustic for those days. Now it might be better, and it might have more of a home.
It's very much a natural appearance.
Oh, for sure.
And I have a couple clarifying questions.
Of course.
I've noticed that, like you mentioned, latigo is sort of just a generic term that many tanneries can make a leather that they call latigo.
Yeah.
What would you say, just outside of Horween in the world, what is latigo known for? Like, what does that mean to people?
Well, I mean, it has some connections to sort of Western type leathers, boots and all those belts and that sort of thing. And, it became very much a generic term, so none of us really lays full claim to that. There's a very broad range of people and latigo types. And very much like other leathers, it's totally customer preference. And if you were to ask us, all right, well, that's nice, so now you've just told me that everybody basically makes a version of this. What's the difference between yours and theirs? The answer is very much like our other leathers, is more. So we use more retan than most people do, and we use oils to the point of what most other tanners would consider overkill. And it's just a durability thing at that point. And the fact that we are putting it on a premium hide, and we're gonna charge an appropriate price for it.
Are you saying that, or are you implying that imparting more material into the leather makes it more durable?
Yeah, I mean it'll wear longer. I mean if you put more oils in it, it'll last longer until it gets to the point where it dries out and starts to crack or tear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's always been our theory, and our customers and their customers most importantly have proved that out for us. I mean you see from time to time, and you saw them when you were here, some of those old Latigo work boots. I mean they took a terrific beating. I mean they and really, if you chose to take care of them, they would have kept looking good. But if you didn't, they didn't quit. They just looked worn.
Right. My observation with the Latigo that I've experienced, and this is the first time I've worn a Fat Herbie wallet in the Latigo, but we've made some other stuff before. My observation with the Latigo is it's sort of like the cordovan in the way that it will sort of suck up a patina. It sort of develops in a different way than the Chromatill. And you had mentioned that, I forget the exact words you used, but the veg tanning that goes into the Latigo has more tree barks when compared to the Chromatill. Basically, I've noticed that it ages better, and I've noticed that veg leathers tend to age better. Is there a different something with the tree barks for the Latigo?
They're different barks.
Yeah.
And because you have a relatively firm surface compared to Chromatill, and your finishes tend to be, they lend themselves. I mean, the scariest thing in terms of patina and Chromatill is there's that beginning where you're sort of first wearing through the shiny stuff, and you have some moments where you look at it and go, wow, that's pretty scary looking, and then it sort of gets it back. Where Latigo goes more directly. It's just like if you were polishing shoes or burnishing shoes, a Latigo or a retan type shoe, something with some firmness, you can take a harder wheel to it and a little bit of wax, and you'll get that sheen that'll start to come up much more quickly. I mean it'll tend to be finer, if that makes sense when you're done with it. I mean Chromatill gets there, but it's more of a process.
When you say finer in terms of like a more like dressy appearance, or is it supposed
it's
to casual?
It's gonna look a little dressier as it finally polishes up. I mean, it's not, because the colors are gonna go away. I mean, it's not gonna stay like pristine. There were some of the guys years ago that made some beautiful corrected grain impregnated leathers, and they were just gorgeous, and they stayed gorgeous, and they were bulletproof. I mean, they looked great. They stayed great. I mean, they looked the same the whole time you wore them, and for some people that was perfect. I mean, our customer tends to want something that develops some character with use with them. In some ways, you look at
age to your style.
Absolutely. You look at your wallet, what it's doing. It's like a little diary of what you do and where you go. Yeah. I mean, it's a record of all the places that it's gone in and out of your pocket.
A lot of people have a baseline understanding of Chromatill because it's become so popular. And when you were, maybe to give people an understanding without having to experience the Latigo in person, if you can sort of compare and contrast those two leathers in different functions, maybe you want to talk about what it would age like in a boot as opposed to a wallet. How do the two leathers, the Latigo and the Chromatill, differ?
Well, I guess I would go to both products. I mean, a Latigo versus a Chromatill wallet. I mean, first of all, the Latigo is going to be a little slower to mold and form, but a little quicker to patina.
Why is that?
Again, that firmer surface, and the fact that it's effectively causing itself to have more rubbing as it goes in and out. You don't have to get past that initial soft surface.
Is the firmer surface is imparted into the skin by the different blends of tree barks? What
combination of that and pasting. I mean, pasting the leather as we paste dry it on those glass frames, you're actually compacting the leather, and that grain is up against the glass as it dries. So that tiny top layer has been compacted quite substantially.
For me, that feeling the hand of the Latigo, that's the first thing that I noticed. It's much more not rigid and firm, but it's dense, as opposed to the Chromatill, which is like a little fluffier, if that's a proper word. It has a little bit more give to it, where the Latigo is more dense.
Well, I guess, I mean, in the terms that some of the shoe guys I've heard say over the years, you know, the Chrome Excel feels round, and the Latigo has some bounce.
I see.
I mean, there's a little more rebound to it in the very beginning.
Other big differences between the Chrome Excel and the Latigo, like for a shoe, why would you choose one leather over the other, or a boot or anything?
Well, the first would be cosmetics. I mean, it's as much as we appreciate pull up, it doesn't suit everybody. In some of the more structured shoes, unless you put something inside of it to help a Chrome Excel shoe hold its structure, as you break it in and the leather begins to wear in, it'll tend to want to sag down. The Latigo will tend to want to hold its shape a little better without so much underneath it supplementing it. It's ultimately a slightly dressier look. I mean, you have to remember that you know, Chrome Excel's roots came from work shoes and army boots, and it was modified and used as we've become more of a dress casual society to be something that you could dress up enough to use it in those. But that was not necessarily its original intention. I mean, it was, you know, boat shoe was sort of as dressy as you got. The Latigo shoes, you know, and the belts, you know, they were a little bit dressier.
I find the aniline Latigo it depends on how you finish it and the color, I suppose.
Yep.
The darker brown colors tend to be pretty dressy in my view. I think the break is also, maybe we want to talk about the break.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends. I don't think it is a slightly more, in our verbiage, a little more sugary break on the Latigo, because, you know, again, because we've compacted that grain. You know, Chrome Excel, when it's right, has very little break when it's folded back on itself. It's very much sort of an in the moment decision. I mean, they're different, and, you know, I've sort of gone through periods where I've really gravitated towards one or the other, and, you know, not like, wow, this is just superior. It's just like, wow, this is the look. I'm really into this look right now. Right. And you know, and what do I mean, if in the twice a year around this part of the world where some liquid is falling out of the sky, you know, if on footwear, I'm probably putting on a pair of Chrome Excels, you know, as a general statement. But, you know, other times I think the Latigo is a perfectly fine. And listen, the moisture is not going to bother it. I mean, that's the other thing, is it'll take it fine. But, you know, you'll stay a little drier, a little longer in your Chrome Excel, and, you know, it just sort of feels a little more rugged.
With the Chrome Excel, there's a lot of versions, which I think people aren't fully aware of, which makes sense because it's confusing. So there's the standard Chrome Excel, we've got woolly Chrome Excel, the Cavalier Chrome Excel, and there's, you touched on some of the versions of the Latigo. Can you sort of run down those versions again and compare each type of Latigo?
Well, sure. I mean, the tannages are basically the same. There are a couple of subsets in them where we adjust the amount of fat liquor or oil in them depending upon how soft we want the final leather to be. But the most basic, of course, would just be naked Latigo. I mean, some people didn't want it glazed; they just wanted it flat, and the color was the color, and they did with it what they did to it, and they took care of it in the final product. The next step then would be glazed Latigo, like the piece we did where we would adjust the color, and then we used glazing binders, and then we would glaze it on the glazing jacks. And then the next step would be aniline Latigo, where we're putting a base coat down on it, and then a top coat, and then a plate, smooth or hair cell, depending upon the customer's wishes, and temper to be determined, and oiling off to be determined if they want a little bit of pull-up.
Your custom shop.
Yeah, I mean, finished flesh sometimes if it was in a 6-ounce weight and they wanted an unlined. We did some heavyweight corrected Some for belts, more for at that time pet products. We did, dog leashes and collars. It holds up great for that. But that, that largely synthetic at this point, and a lot of less expensive leathers on the one end, and on the other end, more expensive stuff from traditional harness leather, the true veg like they use in bridles and saddles.
So you want to tell me about this intense bag that you have here?
Yeah, I mean it's a I don't know, it's sort of a novelty. We met a guy in Germany who made some of these by hand, and he called it the Fish. And he took a lot of car trips, and this was the bag that he used to take for a weekend. And he's got this like really crazy wool liner in it, and he made like 5 of them and decided it was ridiculous and stopped. But we've kept it. He used a German harness leather for the corners and the handles, and I bought one off of him just because I thought it was different than anything I'd ever seen, and it is actually Latigo.
Is that
horse.
the mock, like a mock
It's a
Latigo?
mock Latigo horse front. And then this is just a little underarm carrier, and then this was done with our boxboard print, or what people now are calling the hatch grain, the Russia type leather. And this was done years ago when we were doing a little bit of business with Glazer Designs.
I just love how that one is worn in.
Yeah, I mean it's a great bag.
Well, I really enjoyed that conversation with Skip Horween, teaching us about a little of the history of Latigo and some of the defining features of this special leather. And like I mentioned, we made a couple Fat Herbies here in the natural Latigo that you can pick up on the website right now. And I don't know how long these will be available for. We're doing a little bit of a pre-order. So if you want to try to wear this Latigo alongside me, we'll call it Wear With Me. We'll wear the same mullet together to see how it ages. I've only been wearing this one for about 5 days now, and it's really developing quickly, especially on this light color. All the veg tan character of the Latigo will really lend itself to a nice patina development. So I can't wait to see how this one wears in. If you want to wear it with me, I would love to have you to see how yours wears in. Maybe we can compare and contrast them. So until next time, I hope you have a good one, and take care.